Um, the last time we talked, the first thing I asked you was, "Are you relieved?" And
Mm.
a, a lot of things have happened, though, and we saw a terrorist attack
Mm-hmm.
and by homegrown terrorists, and
Yes.
who are not even. I mean, in the beginning, they were not even considered like terrorists. I mean,
Right. It was just an uprising instead of it's domestic terrorism. I mean, there's no other definition for them.
exactly, exactly. I think that's why it is also necessary to use the word terrorism as opposed to insurrection. I mean, insurrection
Yes.
is it's okay, but I mean the gravitas that the word terrorism has, many
Right.
people don't even know the what insurrection means.
Exactly. Exactly. No, I think terrorism, words are so important when we're assigning it's how we assign value. And so if we're not using the right words to describe something, we're just making it seem like it was not as terrible as it was. We just have to put the right value on it. And you're right, it was terrorism. And I've been saying for a long time that white nationalism, white supremacy is terrorism. And I'm seeing that more as a hashtag, now that I have it a long time, but there's still a lot of room to grow. People assign a different definition to terrorism based upon the color of people's skin. So we need to be clear
Mhm.
on what it is.
Based on the color of their skin and the outfit they wear, based on
Yes.
that. Exactly.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
somebody who is wearing, say, a hijab, or
Mm-hmm.
somebody who has a huge beard, just an ordinary person, they are more likely to be suspected as a kind of terrorist, as opposed to someone who's carrying a Confederate flag. I mean,
Right. Right. And in my mind, I am more afraid of somebody who has the Confederate flag. Uh, they have shown me that I should be afraid of them because of the actions they have taken, the messaging that they share, with the country, as well as trying to indoctrinate youth. I mean, they go after youth to, get them to their cause, and that's just terrifying to me.
that is the whole point. Uh, the last time I was having a discussion a few days ago. Someone asked, "Is it not justified to pick up arms? I mean, in the course of justice. I mean, what's wrong with picking up arms by, say, by the Black Lives Matter movement?"
Mm-hmm.
But this is a different time. We cannot consider revolution to be violent anymore. Violence cannot be revolution. Either you can
Right.
have revolution or you can have violence. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if someone standing true to their conviction, to their cause, picks up arms, and no, regardless of whether they are on the side of inclusion or not, if someone picks arms for their conviction, then the other side may as well say, "You are
Yes.
picking up arms about me."
Yes. We just need to escalate it and continue to escalate it instead of resolving it. Absolutely.
You see, our first nature is cruelty. Our first nature
Mm-hmm.
is cruelty. We are all born animals,
Mm-hmm.
every single human, because that's how millions of years of survival in the jungle made us. They made us
Right.
cruel. Because cruelty is the law of the jungle. Either you kill or you be
Mm-hmm.
killed. That's the law.
Right. That self-preservation is our first and initial reaction to anything.
Mhm. So that is the whole point. I mean, that is why racism comes naturally to us. That is
Mm-hmm.
why any kind of discrimination comes naturally to us. That is why sexism comes naturally to us, because we have
Mm-hmm.
been violent, we have been cruel, we have been discriminatory the whole time.
Right.
So kindness is a new perception. Justice is a new perception.
Mm-hmm.
They may not be as strong as our predominant characteristics of cruelty. But if we do not start practicing them at this very moment, then they're never going to be strong enough to overwhelm the inhumanities of society.
That's exactly right. And that's something, I work in civil rights. And one time my daughter, she was 6 or 7, and somebody asked her what it was her mom did. And she said, she teaches people how to be kind to each other. And that just really, that struck with me. And she is so right. It's something that does have to be taught to counter our initial reaction to other people, to put them outside of our circle of human concern. I agree with you 100%. Kindness is the key, and it's something that can be learned. It's something that can be taught. It might not be your initial reaction to be kind to somebody, but you can sure practice it, and then it comes naturally. And we just have to counter the discrimination, the biases, and we have to understand the impact of those. I mean, that's trauma. It's continued, it's generational trauma, it's individual trauma, and we need to understand that as white people, as cultures, as communities, so we're there to stop it.
That is the trouble. We do not want to accept the biases that we have. We do not want to accept the prejudices that we have. We have already convinced ourselves that we are perfect. There's nothing wrong with us.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with the idea that my nation is superior to all other nations. My religion is superior to all other religions. My color is superior to all other colors. And that very idea sustains the delusion of religious supremacy, cultural supremacy, and so on. But it may have worked in the olden days when the world was not connected, when every community was living in particular geographical location without any connection to the outside world. But now the whole world has become a family in a way. So in action, in practice, it has become a family in yet inside our heart, we are not yet convinced. We don't even feel that these are family. We still continue to say America is for the white Christians. And we continue to say that the brown is illegal, black is dangerous, and all of this. If a community has resources, has the capacity to include others, then that very act of assimilation is the first sign of life. There is nothing else. That is the beginning of life, assimilation. Except here, savagery is considered to be life. Prejudice is considered to be the principle of life. And that is why we need so many institutions, so many ideas, civil rights commission, policies, law, and all of that. Because the individual psyche is not accountable, so it is like they have to be forced by means of these policies. And that
absolutely. Yes, it's interesting how people say, well, you can't legislate morality. I would argue that we can and we should, because like you said, our set point is not to always help the other person. We want to put them in another pile or in another group rather than having them feel they belong. A lot of times when we invite people, we say, this has already been, this is already made. This is the system. This is how it functions. This is how it is. But you can join us if you want to. You don't have any voice. You don't have any agency. But what we really need is to raise that and start anew so we can co-create systems in which all people feel that they belong, all people have agency, all people can have a voice to make and break policy. And it does come down to regulation. Regulation For example, when they made same-sex marriage legal in Iowa, that was several years ago, and people are still saying, well, you can't legislate morality. That's a human rights and civil rights issue. This is not about your morality. This is about their rights. And we just really need to be clear on the difference between the assumptions that we place.
Here, actually, the things are not as black and white.
Mm-hmm.
It is true that I mean, we do not live in an ideal world. We live in an organic world. An organic world has certain limitations. I want to have a world where we do not need law. I want to have a world where we do not need soldiers, machine guns, law enforcement. I want to have that,
Right.
but I cannot have that because it is a distant future, way distant. Human have not advanced, is not even close to that future.
No, we're so new as a species that we have a lot of growing to do.
We are so new as a so-called advanced species. We have just
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, I see. I get your point. But yes, we are new as an. Again, we are considering ourselves advanced because we have made exciting technological advancements, scientific advancements. But again, an advancement that serves only the privileged and excludes the rest of the world. Is it really an advancement, or is it an abuse of resources? Is it an abuse of power?
Yes, absolutely.
Until an advancement comes to the use of the whole human being, the whole society, without exclusion, without sectarianism of any kind, that advancement is not worth anything. What is the point of it all? And that is where, I mean, we are still living with the duality of this conflict between capitalism and socialism.
Yes.
Why? Because apparently, in a purely capitalistic world, all they are interested in is revenue. All they're interested in is economic growth. There is no place for principles. There is no place for morality. There is no place for collective concern. Collectivism has no place there.
Correct.
That is where socialism comes in, because socialism is nothing but an everyday, ordinary concern for the society. Now, people philosophize it with the term socialism. That's their problem. But as long as there is an advancement which doesn't include the society, which doesn't involve the society, then there has to be an agency of people, individuals, either by means of policy, by means of law, doesn't matter. There has to be certain agency, there has to be certain way to include those human aspects in that entire paradigm. Otherwise, those disparities are only going to get more vicious, more striking.
Definitely. That's one thing when people ask me about my work. I love what I do. I think it's important work. But what I do say is, I wish I didn't have to have this job. I wish that I did not have to work in civil rights. I wish we did not have to exist. I would love to work myself out of a job. I know that's not going to happen anytime soon. Definitely not in my lifetime, because we continue to look for the differences in one another, which is fine. You know, we need to celebrate our differences. We need to celebrate each other's as individuals. But when we start assigning certain assumptions or certain negative attributes, you know, those biases, as we know, for example, the healthcare system here in the States, there is so much disparity. I mean, we knew this, but COVID has just made it much more visible. We've known this for years working in civil rights, but now the rest of the country is learning this. And last year with the murder of George Floyd, it was the first time in my career where I had so many people coming to me instead of me going to them, asking me, what can I do? What can I say? What action should I take? What book should I read? Typically, it's me chasing somebody, saying, hey, read this, do this, talk about this. And it's continued, and I'm really hoping that the momentum continues. I was very thankful that the jury did the right decision for Derek Chauvin. That, in my mind, was the only decision that should have been made. But historically, we know that is not always the case in our justice system. There's been so many people who were not brought to justice. And for me, it's a step towards justice. It's accountability for one man's actions. It's accountability for Derek Chauvin. There's a lot of things around him that allowed that to happen, and that's systemic. Why did the other officers not step in? How was he trained? Why was somebody who had 17 plus other reports still allowed to be an officer? There is something very wrong with the system that allows that to continue. And it's not just Minneapolis. I mean, this is worldwide. I mean, we see this kind of behavior, in all of our states and across the globe. And so it's going to take a lot of breaking down and building up. And that's, it's really hard to break down the status quo because people like power and people in power like the status quo.
That's I think of the last event, Dante, right?
Yeah.
How do you mistake a taser for a gun? How do you mistake I mean,
and she had been an officer for 26 years and she had trained other officers. I don't understand that either. And between the color of them, between the color of the taser versus the gun, the placement of them, I've never been in a situation. I'm not a police officer, but I just can't understand how
it is possible that in a situation you may confuse. It is possible. But if that is the case for the person, then that person is in the wrong job. You are trained. If you are trained, then that wouldn't be the situation. If you are making that mistakes, then you are in the wrong job. And that is the problem.
Yes.
You have to admit the problem is not that there is prejudice, there is stereotyping in the police department. The problem is the complete indifference towards their mistakes, towards the corruption. That is the problem. I mean, every single field has its shortcomings. Every single field, whether it is law enforcement, whether it is politics, whether it is science, religion, philosophy, each one of them has their shortcomings because each of these constructs are made by humans, and humans are a fusion of good and bad. So naturally, all of their good as well as their bad are going to get imposed on the constructs that they create for the society.
Absolutely.
So how do we reform it? We reform it by first admitting the problems, accepting the errors.
Yes. I've had conversations over the years with with police officers, with police chiefs, and part of the problem is they've been saying to me, yeah, this is a problem. Yes, we see it. We know it's a problem, but it's not a problem in our community. And so they're pointing fingers to everybody else's city saying, well, they're doing that without realizing it's here. And it's in every police force. It's in every system. It is embedded. I mean, we're built upon slavery. We're built upon hundreds of years of oppression and marginalization. And so for us to say it doesn't exist here.
America was built on white supremacy.
Exactly. And, in the years of the laws, from Jim Crow to, Plessy versus Ferguson to, additional other laws, people don't understand that's our history. And 400 years is not a very long time. We've made progress, but And another aspect, too, in regards to disability, the Disability Act in the States was not written until 1990. That is not very long ago at all. We didn't even consider individuals with disability to need rights or to need privileges or to need access or opportunities. We would assign them their own value and put our impressions of what a quality of life would be on them. And so I'm glad we have it now, but it's interesting that it took so long. And the same thing with the Civil Rights Act of 64 and 68. That's not long ago. I mean, those are not in my lifetime, but those are not that long ago. Those are my parents' lifetime, just one generation removed. And we just need to continue that work.
The entire world, America has this image of sophisticated and advanced country. But inside, when you get inside the fabric of that society, then you start to see the real face of the society. And,
Right.
and particularly, it would become more striking when you look at actions and thought patterns in the South, particularly. I was watching this documentary, and there some people are saying, they're saying in the interview, asking, do you believe that there has been a genocide of the Jewish people from Nazis in Germany? And then this woman, this mother, I can't even comprehend it. This mother who's carrying a child, a newborn baby, they are saying that there has to be another genocide. This is a mother just and with a baby in her lap, and she's saying there has to be another genocide because America belongs to the white people. I mean,
that it both enrages me, breaks my heart. I cannot fathom that mindset. It's just so alien to me. I would be concerned if if it wasn't alien to me, but just the idea of any culture or any person being better than somebody based upon physical traits or based upon a belief system or based upon sexual orientation is just appalling. And it's frustrating, to be honest, working in this field and hearing those stories, because I know that, as we know, we had Trump as a president, and we have a system that created him as a president and that accepted him as a president and still support his work and still support his appalling beliefs and actions.
And still support that in the next term he's going to be president again. Still believe that.
That would, oh my, I just don't even know. I mean, my family, we joke, not joke about, we just need to move to another country. We're like, we just need to go somewhere else. I don't care where, we just need to go somewhere else. Because he in no way reflects any of my values, my family's values, my friends' values, but still white supremacy led to him having the ability to be the president. And because I am white, I do benefit from white supremacy. I do have white privilege, even though I don't partake in it. I don't partake in being prejudiced or have biases, but it's allowed me to get to where I am. It's allowed my family to, purchase a house, to go to school, where a lot of folks were not able to do so for varying reasons. And so it is a system. I know people were happy that Biden got to be the president, which, I am too. They think, oh, we're done, Trump is gone. No, it's not. This is a very small step. As you know, Trump just emboldened what was already there. People are just getting more vocal. I mean, we saw hate groups and hate crimes going way up during his time, and they continue to go way up with Asian American and Pacific Islanders. I mean, it's a continual problem that we're going to continue to have to deal with for a long time.
You see, Trump is not the disease. He was
right.
just a symptom.
Exactly.
The real
Yes.
disease is this thing which we call group loyalty or nationalism. I mean,
Hmm.
the very idea of nationalism is out of place today. Nationalism has no place in a civilized society.
No.
So before that was okay. We were living, each community was living in their own location, and that's fine. But we are living in a new time. We are living in a connected world. So nationalism, which comes from our evolutionary characteristic of group loyalty, when we were
Hmm.
living in tribes, you had to be extremely loyal to your group because when you stayed together as a group and was completely loyal, that increased your chances of survival in the jungle, in the wilderness,
Right.
against attacks of predators or invasion from other tribes. But here's the thing: we are not living in a tribal world anymore.
Right. Right.
Well, we're living in a civilized, at least it ought to be civilized. It ought to be, and we are living in an advanced community, advanced world. Yes, there are borders. Let the borders be because they are necessary to maintain the functions of different of all these countries, at least until the individual human from all corners of the world start to feel that the world is their own. Till then, we will need those borders, but we have to erase the
Right.
borders that we have raised inside of us. We have to
Yes.
erase those borders.
Yes.
Each nation. I mean, I have this sonnet called I don't know whether you've read it, the American Sonnet, which Hawkins
Mm-hmm.
or the arriving from UK to uh, North America and then removing, just getting rid of all the natives and then steal their land and making a new community for that.
Hmm.
Each community, if we, okay, let's consider it. If we think of all the nations in the world, other than the Africans living in Africa, every single person on earth is a descendant of an immigrant. Because if we go
Exactly.
back long enough, all of us have
Yes.
come from Africa.
Yes.
Now now the, now the climate made the changes in the skin complexion because of the weather and all of that, our hardship and everything. That made the difference in our appearance, not in the character. The
Right.
character is universal. That doesn't change because of the color. So each community in our history, now that is the history. Each nation has a lot of atrocities. Each
Hmm.
nation. If we go
Yes.
looking for atrocities, we'll find
You'll
atrocities in
find them.
every nation. We
Hmm.
cannot change that. But what we can do is accept that there have been atrocities. But
Yes.
we have to be accountable for them and be
Hmm.
responsible that they do not happen anymore. We cannot
Absolutely.
live as tribals anymore.
It is so true. And Congress over the years has tried several times to have legislation, to even have a commission to look into reparations. They won't even pass a law or a bill that allows us to look at it and to even discuss the possibility of reparations. And if we're not willing, like you said, to look at our history, and if we're not willing to try to overcome our moral debts, how are we going to move forward until we're able to see the past as it was? And the history we're teaching in schools over time is getting better compared to perhaps when I went to school. You know, Thanksgiving was definitely glossed over. We did not talk about how the Native Americans and the indigenous tribes were completely destroyed by our colonizers. And we talked about how they sat together at a table, eating together for Thanksgiving. And then, we celebrated Christopher Columbus as kids. And now, we're moving away from that a little bit more. Instead of having Columbus Day, some are having Indigenous Day or Native American Day. And I think that's the way it should be. But we still have so much history we're not teaching. There's so many like people of color, if they're an author, if they write a book, if they write poetry, they are not read near as often as like Robert Frost or Emily Dickinson, the greats who are white. And we need to broaden our own experiences for our youth so they're able to start making change. I have great faith in the youth. They amaze me. Their wisdom amazes me. I know they're not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, and I know there's biases and prejudice within the youth. But this upcoming generation, Gen Z, they're becoming more vocal, more willing to put themselves out there against the social construct of race and racism. And I've seen that more. And even talking about toxic masculinity, my 15-year-old and I had a conversation about toxic masculinity last week. I didn't know what that was when I was her age. I never heard of it. And so just the fact that she understands that gives me hope.
You see, that is what let's talk about history. The world doesn't have history. What we have is a whitewashed history.
Yes.
Even the map of the world that is taught around in schools, even that does not depict the actual size of the continents. They depict the continents of white population larger than they actually are.
Right.
Because it was charted by a white person for white benefits. So the idea of conquering the world by the whites.
Yes.
That is a fact. So every single historical fact, there has been certain whitewashing. Columbus, there are new evidence that is showing that Columbus never even set foot in America.
Right.
And then he was no hero.
No.
He slaughtered people.
He was a horrible, horrible man.
And then we are celebrating as Columbus Day, as a hero, as an explorer. And these are the mistakes these are the errors that we have to correct. I mean, evolution is the sign of life. If you're rigid, if you think that everything is perfect as it is, there's no advancement to be made. And that's it. If good is dead. So we have to continuously keep evolving. We have to continuously look at our mistakes from the past, from the mistakes of our ancestors. So as I was saying, that the American sonnet, so there is this, some Southerners continue to send me hate mails. And okay, so now you are on the anti-American bandwagon as well. So that's
no. Oh goodness.
If we talk about American, who are the real Americans? The native Indians. They are the real Americans.
They're the ones who are here. I mean, that's what I say. I'm like, everybody else, we're immigrants and we're colonizers. We are not natives. We should, that's a great source of frustration. That the conversation, when we say we don't want any immigrants here, we don't want any more refugees here, we don't want any more unaccompanied minors here. Well, how did your family get here? How did your history get here? How did your ancestors get here? Why are you so blind to the fact that you're assigning something to these people that you have in your own history as a negative? And, speaking about like a fixed mindset, we talk about, like you said, growth and evolution are synonymous. I mean, we're not able to do one without the other. And you look at white supremacy and white nationalism, and they think that they're at the epic of their evolution. They think that they're the highest and the best. And there's just no room for improvement if you have that mindset. And I don't understand. I'll just be honest, I don't understand that mindset. I mean, personally, I'm always looking to be better. But to think that you were at the epic, at the high point of all of evolution because of your skin color, there's a lot missing.
But again, how do we deal with this mindset? Because
Mm-hmm.
you see, hate doesn't know reason. Hate doesn't understand reason. And that
Right.
hate, if you continue to listen to these people, if you continue to argue with these
Right.
people, then any healthy human being who has a healthy, rational mind is bound to become enraged by
Mm-hmm.
these people. And
Yeah.
that is again another trouble. So how do we reform the society without submitting to hate ourselves?
Mm-hmm.
We cannot. We can legislate. We can make new policies. We have to continuously reforming. If we are to take the constitution as the standard of morality, then we have to make sure that the constitution itself keeps evolving. Second
Yes.
Amendment is out of
Yes.
place.
It's not necessary. There's no place for that in our society now. There's no need for that in our society now. We're not going to raise up arms against our government. And I know there are people in our country who believe that we need to do that. Um, but I strongly disagree with that.
So we have to, if there is to be a revolution, I'm not talking about just a theoretical nonviolence and all that.
Right.
We have to get rid of the very idea that every time we face a trouble, every time we face an injustice, we can only treat that by becoming violent ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We have to get rid of that very idea. Only then, perhaps, the future generation will have some sort of perception of what humanity is all about. There
Right.
is the normal behavior, the standard. We live in a society, we live in a paradigm that demands a person to be self-centric, to be
Mm-hmm.
self-obsessed. That
Yes.
that is taught around the world, and
Mm-hmm.
that needs to change. And we cannot just teach that; we have to become the example of that by
Yes.
not by not submitting to violence ourselves.
Absolutely. We have to model that behavior because how else are we going to have our youth learn that if all they see is us reacting, um, viciously or reacting in anger instead of reason or out of love? How are we going to move humanity further? It's going to continue in that cycle of I need to react to you, then you react to my reaction, and then it just escalates. So we need to find that moment. And so personally, I work hard to as much as I disagree with some politicians or I disagree with certain individuals, I work hard to not say anything negative about them personally. I don't. I don't make
Negative
certain.
opinions.
Right. And so I try to, if I disagree with somebody, I'll talk about the disagreement. I'll talk about the content of our disagreements. I'm not going to start assigning my assumptions on them about their intelligence or their looks or things that don't matter whatsoever, but working on the actual conversation and building those relationships. We need to build those bridges. And some bridges, I think Bell Hooks said this, but some bridges are short and some bridges are long. But we need to build those bridges to other people who are completely different than us. It's hard. It's hard. I'm not saying it's easy. Don't get me wrong. It's not easy.
Nothing good and civilized is ever easy. I mean, it is easy to be a racist. It is easy
Mm-hmm.
to be promiscuous. It is easy to be a sexist because
Mm-hmm.
we've been doing that as an animal, as a tribal, as a savage for all our life. Yeah,
Right.
all our ancestors' life. It is difficult, and that is why it is civilized
Mm-hmm.
because we haven't yet developed strong enough neural connections for those civilized capacities. But then it
Mm-hmm.
starts with us. So
Yes.
later, it will become easy. Only if we practice them today, it will become easy for the future generations.
Absolutely.
They will be accountable. They will work on their prejudices. If they see us working on our prejudices, then they will do the same. But there is the trouble. Can we reason? I mean, we have to be sure not to submit to violence, not to submit to anger. That is obvious. That is a fundamental criteria for civilized behavior. But again, we have to admit the fact that we cannot build bridges with many of these people. We just cannot. I mean,
Yeah.
how do you reason with Jewish space lasers? How do you reason with QAnon?
Oh my gracious. Yeah. It, you know, as much as I do agree that it's hard, but I can't give up. Like I still will talk, and I'll still answer questions, and I'll still maintain my composure, no matter what is said or thrown at me. As you can imagine, working in civil rights, I've had some pretty horrible things said to me. I've had people try to threaten my family because they didn't like what I was standing for, or they said, "We know where your daughter goes to school," which is terrifying as a parent, of course. But I have to keep doing this because what model am I showing my own children if I allow that fear to stop me from doing what is right? There are so many people across the world who have like Malala. I mean, there's so many women and so many men and everybody who have just done amazing things and stood up in horrific moments. So the least I can do is stand up for their values and stand up for human rights and stand up for civil rights and push those forward in my locus of control. I don't have control over the beliefs of some people. I don't have the control of their actions, but I do have control of how I react to that. And I do have control over how I speak with them. And so I use that as much as possible to try to move the conversations forward. I've had some very interesting conversations over the years with a Ku Klux Klan individual, white supremacist individuals, and or sometimes you can get a little crack in their armor. So I just keep trying.
We continue we have these ideas. We have these ideas of the very fact that we are civilized. How do we know we are not civilized? How do we know? We have these ideas: human rights, constitutional rights, humanitarianism, humanitarian or human rights activist, and all of that. We have these ideas because we are yet to comprehend the gravitas of the term human.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody who is actually a human with all the conviction, all the conscience, all the courage and rational abilities, and that person is automatically a human rights activist. That person is automatically a humanitarian. We will no longer need to use these terms. We will no longer even need to use terms like martyr or social justice advocate, all of that, because every single human will be a social justice advocate. What is social justice? Social justice is just a reflection of basic human behavior in society.
Right.
But we are yet not in a position where it is universal. So we have to use these terms. We have to use these means of policy, civil rights movements, and civil rights activities in all sectors of society, because these are just the way, just the path to achieve the goal that we want. The goal that there will be inclusion. The term human ought to automatically make a person inclusive, make a person accepting, but somehow it doesn't, because we are not there yet. And
Right.
we will not be there if we just wash our hands of all responsibility because Joe
Hmm.
Biden is the
Right.
because we have the
Right.
Biden-Harris administration.
Hmm.
Just because they are the administration now doesn't mean that racism has gone away. It is systemic, not going to
Right.
go away for a long, long time. And
Hmm.
and 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 Donald Trump is not going to go away for a long, long time. At least so
No.
long as he lives. That is a
Right.
problem. You have to consider that.
It is. And, part of our problem, I love what you said about just the mere aspect of being human means we should be welcoming and inclusive and accepting of others. And our problem as humans is we have this tight circle of human concern where it's small and it's hierarchical and it's not inclusive of people who are perhaps different from us. It ends up being oftentimes an echo chamber of your own values, of your own belief system, of how you look, how you act. And we really need to work on expanding that. Um, Recently, I did a workshop with some leaders in our community, and we're talking about our own personal networks. How diverse is your own personal network? Do you have anybody in your network that's different than you? And the majority of them don't. They perhaps are the same gender, they're around the same age, the same religion, same race, may or may not have a family. And so we go to people who are like us. And so those are the ones who are in our circle of concern. And so how do we move outside of that? You have to be intentional about that. You have to go to places maybe you've not been to before. You have to talk with people maybe you've not talked with before. You have to be willing to put yourself out there and have those conversations and meet new people and hear different ideas. I mean, sure, there's people in my own world that I disagree with them on a variety of things, but we're still able to have a conversation. We're still able to agree on other items. And so we just need to be willing to go outside ourselves and seek out people who are different from us. This whole culture of I don't see color or I'm colorblind is just it's a disservice. I mean, you are ignoring an entire facet of a person's being. And when you say that, and number two, it's not true. It's not true. We can see color. And instead of saying you're colorblind or you don't see color, say I see color and I can celebrate that. And I want to learn more about it. I want to learn more about you as a human. And yeah, just knock off saying I'm colorblind. It's just not true. That one just gets me every time I hear it.
These differences, they are not going to destroy. What will destroy the world is our indifference to injustice, indifference to discrimination. We have to recognize these differences. There is this statement in one of my books where I say, let's fight with each other. Let's disagree.
Yeah.
Let's argue. Let's bite each other's head off, but never hate each other, no matter what.
Right.
I mean, we are just humans, and because there are so many humans, it is obvious that there will be so many ideas, so many opinions, and that is the beauty of it all. If everybody thought the same way, then the world would turn boring.
Be so boring. Oh my gosh! I know when oh sure. One of our things we do for our work is we go, well, not recently, but we go to schools and we talk to kids. And I've talked to about 6,000 kids so far in just a few years. And we talk explicitly about differences and how those differences make our world more beautiful. And and then I asked them to describe a rainbow. How many colors in a rainbow? These are young children. So they tell me all the colors. And I said, what would you think if the rainbow was only blue? oh, well, that would just be boring and ugly. And then I had them compare like their arms, you know, I'm like, look at all the different colors we are. Isn't that a beautiful human rainbow? And just seeing the light bulbs going off in these kids' head of, oh, wow, look how pretty you are. Ooh, that's really pretty. Oh, we're similar, but we're different. And then just talking about no matter what, we celebrate those differences and we connect with people. And so I love working with the kids. They're the ones that continue to give me hope for tomorrow and today, frankly, because they're here now. People often say the youth is for our future. I'm like, that's true, but they're also here now. So let's celebrate them and use them now, use their wisdom now. So I just think the kids in general are phenomenal and much more interesting than us adults.
Yes, they are yes, beginning to take responsibility. I mean,
Yes.
much more accountable today than the previous generations.
Mm-hmm.
They're much more accountable. For example, there are certain hate mails that I receive that say, "You're a scientist, so why do you talk about politics? Can't you keep politics out of it?" What is called? When did talking about justice, when did advocating for equality become a field, a specific, particular profession?
Right.
That is intrinsic to every single conscientious human being. That has to be intrinsic to the human character itself. Otherwise, if you're not concerned for the benefits of your society, if you're not concerned for the people and what's happening with the people around you, then you're not even a human to begin with. It's just a machine. There is a difference between a machine and a human. A machine can be intelligent, and a human can be intelligent. But even the smartest human has no value until that person knows the value of human life. So
Right.
life first, then everything else, whatever comes, technology, science, philosophy, politics, policy, law, all of these are there to serve human life. And this human life, it doesn't say specific human life of white color, human life of Christian religion, human life of Christian male straight characteristics.
Right.
Human life means there is no distinction, there is no sectarianism, and non-sectarianism is humanity. So without that non-sectarianism, without that unity towards the society, unity between the self and the society, there's never gonna be a civilization whatsoever.
Mm-hmm. It's so true, and it's interesting that people come at you for talking about issues around justice, and so many politicians have made science a political issue, from climate change to history to how we treat one another to the ethics of it. So of course you're going to talk about it. It's in your lane, as they would say, you know. And why, for example, why is the pandemic? Why is that a political issue? Why are there people on different sides of the aisle letting us know whether or not to get a vaccination, letting us know we should, you know, not be out in public, letting us know whether or not to wear a mask? Why is that a political issue? People are dying and they continue to die. Why is it Democrats versus Republicans here in the States? I just don't understand it. It's either you value life and your fellow human or you don't. And that's not political, that's humanity.
You see, that is, I mean, the society has been living with a certain dualities. Either you are a believer or you are a non-believer. There can be nothing else.
Right.
Either you believe in Christ or you don't believe in Christ. There cannot be anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Either you are straight. No, either you are a man or you are a woman. There cannot be anything else.
Right. There's not a third or fourth option.
So that is the thing. I mean, there is no desire for change. There is no desire for growth. There is no desire to evolve, and without that, we cannot change. We cannot make any progress whatsoever. Elon
Mhm.
Musk is going to take the certain privileged classes to the Mars. That's okay, completely fine. How is that going to affect the rest of the oppressed communities of the world?
Mhm.
I mean, technology has its place, surely. Science has its place. But if all of this do not serve the whole of humanity, then they're pointless. So
Mhm.
that is now this becomes a political issue. Why is it a political issue? Because it involves human welfare. Now, if it is a basic human welfare, then why does it have to be considered with the term politics? It's just humanity.
Right.
Everybody ought to be concerned with human welfare. If they are
Mhm.
not, they're just machine. Now, you may call it politics, you may call it socialism, you may call it communism, you may call it whatever you want, but it's just basic humanity to care for one another.
Right. And that's not always the set point for people. Like you said earlier, often our initial reaction is to protect ourselves and say, what is in this for me? How is this going to help me? And we need to shift that needle. We need to move that concern and that care outside of ourselves, outside of our own family, outside of our own friends. I in the past, people have asked me, well, why do you care about somebody who doesn't even live in our country? Why do you care about somebody who is living in Uganda, and how they're being treated right now? And in my mind, I'm thinking, well, why don't you? Why are you not caring? Um, that's our responsibility. I think we have a collective responsibility to care for one another. We have a collective responsibility to make others feel they belong and that they're cared for and that they're loved. And if we don't do that collectively, it's individuals only have so much power. And so we need to do that as a whole globe to care for one another. Otherwise, we're going to maintain this moment of chaos and this moment of violence and polarization. We really just have to start caring. I mean, it sounds so simple. You just have to care for people. It's not that hard. But for some people it truly is, because that's not their natural inclination. And so I just keep telling people, and I just keep saying it, just be kind and care for one another, love one another. It does make a difference.